Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 11th Chapter, Texts 26, 27, and 28. Santushta lolupa daksha dharmagya priya satyavak apramata suchi snigdha pating tvapititam bhajet santushta lolupa santushta, always satisfied. Alolupa, without being greedy. Daksha, very expert in serving. Dharmagya, fully conversant with religious principles. Priya, pleasing. Satya, truthful. Vak, in speaking. Apramata, attentive in service to her husband. Suchi, always clean and pure. Snigdha, affectionate. Patim, the husband. To, but. Apatitam, who is not fallen. Bhajet, should worship. I'll just chant verses 26 and 27. Samarjano palebhyabhyam griha mandana vartanai swayam cha mandita nityang parimrishta parichchada kamer uchchavai sadvi prashrayena damena cha vakyai satyai priyai premna kale kale bhajet patim. Translation: a chaste woman must dress nicely and decorate herself with golden ornaments for the pleasure of her husband. Always wearing clean and attractive garments, she should sweep and clean the household with water and other liquids so that the entire house is always pure and clean. She should collect the household paraphernalia and keep the house aromatic with incense and flowers, and must be ready to execute the desires of her husband. Being modest and truthful, controlling her senses, and speaking in sweet words, a chaste woman should engage in the service of her husband with love, according to time and circumstances. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. According to the injunction of Yajnavalkya, an authority on religious principles, Ashuddhe sampatiksyo hi mahapatikadushitaha, one is considered contaminated by the reactions of great sinful activities when one has not been purified according to the methods of the Dasavada Samskara. In Bhagavad-Gita, however, the Lord says, Namam duskritano mudha prapadyante naradamaha. Those miscreants who do not surrender unto me are the lowest of mankind. The word Naradama means non-devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also said, Ye bhaje se bhada abhakta hina cha. Anyone who is a devotee is sinless. One who is not a devotee, however, is the most fallen and condemned. It is recommended, therefore, that a chaste wife not associate with a fallen husband. A fallen husband is one who is addicted to the four principles of sinful activity, namely illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. Specifically, if one is not a soul surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is understood to be contaminated. Thus, a chaste woman is advised not to agree to serve such a husband. It is not that a chaste woman should be like a slave while her husband is Naradama, the lowest of men. Although the duties of a woman are different from those of a man, a chaste woman is not meant to serve a fallen husband. If her husband is fallen, it is recommended that she give up his association. Giving up the association of her husband does not mean, however, that a woman should marry again and thus indulge in prostitution. If a chaste woman unfortunately marries a husband who has fallen, she should live separately from him. Similarly, a husband can separate himself from a woman who is not chaste according to the description of the Shastra. The conclusion is that a husband should be a pure Vaishnava, and that a woman should be a chaste wife, with all the symptoms described in this regard. Then both of them will be happy and make spiritual progress in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksuram Latimna Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Grim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dirataram. While studying for this verse, I was remembering something that Srila Prabhupada said in Mayapur in 1976 about this same relationship and how he characterized this concept. And it's not that long. This is part of his lecture. So this is from 7th Canto, 9th chapter, text 24. It's in March 2nd, 1976, so that's tomorrow. So that's 42 years. This is the idea, to become servant and to become maidservant. This is the ideal of human civilization. That every woman should try to become maidservant of her husband, and every man should try to become the 100 times servant of Krishna. This is Indian civilization. Not that husband and wife, we are equal rights. That in Europe, America, the movement is going on, equal rights. That is not Vedic civilization. Vedic civilization is the husband should be a sincere servant of Krishna, and the wife should be a sincere maidservant of the husband. Therefore, here it is said, Upanayamam nija britti parshvam. This is the best association. When Narad Muni is describing how the man should behave, how the woman should behave, we are discussing now in our tape dictaphone, you'll hear that there is no such thing to become master. It is useless. You cannot become master. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Bhagavad-Gita 3:27. You cannot become master. Jivaya Sarupoy Nitya Krishna Das. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 20, 108, 109. Either man or woman, everyone is servant of Krishna. We have to be trained up in that platform, how to become the best servant. Not only servant directly, but servants of the servant. This is called parampara servant. My spiritual master is the servant of his spiritual master, and I am also servant of my spiritual master. Similarly, we think servant of the servant. There is no question of becoming. This is material disease. Krishna Bulya Jiva Bhog Vanchakari Pasate Maya Tare Japatiya Dhare. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 1380. As soon as we become puffed up, now I shall become master. I shall be simply giving order. I shall not follow anyone. That is Maya. So that disease is going on beginning from Brahma down to the ant. Prahlad Maharaj has understood this so-called false prestigious position of becoming a master. He says that I am quite aware of this false thing. Kindly engage me. Nija Britta Parshvam. Nija Britti Parshvam means just like apprentice. One apprentice is engaged to one expert man, and by the apprentice learns how to do the things. Therefore he says Nija Britti Parshvam. Not that immediately I become very expert. Servant. But let me. This institution is for that purpose. If somebody comes here, the free hotel and free sleeping accommodation, then his coming to this association is useless. He must learn how to serve. Nija Britti Parshvam. Those who are serving, one should learn from him how he's serving 24 hours. Then our joining this institution will be successful. And if we take it that here it's an institution where we can have free hotel, free living, and free sense gratification, then the whole institution will be spoiled. Be careful. All the GBCs, they should be careful that this mentality may not increase. Everyone should be very eager to serve, to learn how to serve. Nija Britti Parshvam. Then life will be successful. Thank you very much. So Srila Prabhupada spent the last 1.5 years lecturing on 7th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, almost exclusively. So obviously there was a lot of emphasis on the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, questions of Prahlad Maharaj, the perfect society, 4 social classes. And we know he indicated that proportionally half his work was done. And that other 50% was yet to be implemented. So in that implementation, there are so many considerations. But first consideration is how to serve. And we hear this on a regular basis. We're daily chanting the Vaishnava Pranam. We're daily chanting the Shikshastaka. But the key in all of this is implementation. One has to be his own example in one sense. He has to consider, am I behaving? Is this term sadachar, is my behavior suitable according to my engagement? If I'm a pot washer, I don't have to consider too much. If I'm cleaning the floors or cleaning the bathrooms, we're not worried. But when one accepts some responsibility, then he must take that position seriously and execute his duties faithfully, keeping in mind that not just Krishna is watching, because we know that. Krishna is seated in the heart. He's understanding what is our real attitude, aptitude. Sarva Sichaham Riddhi Sanivishtam Taksmiti Aganabapavanam Cha. So accordingly to our surrender, he will reveal the more and more appreciation. Because technically, like that verse says, Sarva Sichaham, this understanding is already there. It is not something artificial. I am not reading this Bhagavatam with my limited faculties. What can I hope to accomplish? This Turiya, transcendental, this word Turiya, Prabhupada says, beyond the 3 dimensions, length, breadth, height. We're just scratching the surface. But we achieve this level, whatever level of realization, by our behavior. Tadarajas tamo bhavo kamalobhadayas cheta etiranavidam. So this coming through the modes, this ability to appreciate, according to the scripture, What is the difference between the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance? Another example Srila Prabhupada gave, and due to our misbehavior, actually, he was coming down to class in Mayapur, and he passed by the bathroom. Anyone who's been to Mayapur, they know Srila Prabhupada's room. There, he was sharing the bathroom. This is Prabhupada's. He was even apologizing to the devotees that please excuse, there's so much difficulty. Building, everything was just being constructed, not yet finished. Facilities seemingly were less than what Srila Prabhupada might want. But when he came past the bathroom, it was very nasty. I can only tell you that there were dozens and dozens of devotees coming to India for the first time, and they were all very sick. They weren't taken care. We didn't know what to eat, what to drink, what not to eat, what not to drink. And so you can imagine this bathroom was just like the material world, hellish. And Prabhupada came downstairs to class and he said, and at that time there were so many devotees there from the Radha Damodar TSKP, Traveling Sankirtan Party. And many were expecting to receive second initiation at that time. And Prabhupada was saying that he was incredulous. He could not believe how that bathroom was in that condition. He said, how could you not see the situation? Therefore, he said, you must be of the same mode. So this bathroom is the mode of ignorance. Everyone ignored it. Therefore, you must be in the mode of ignorance. And he gave the example that acid and acid, there is no reaction. Water and water, there is no reaction. But acid and water, there is a big reaction. So he implied that, and why is he saying this? He said, therefore, he said, maybe we should not be giving second initiation. There's no one who's come to this level of goodness. Simple thing. Simple thing. How you interact with your environment. And the environment means everything. The deities, the devotees, your service. If I'm callous, casual, oblivious, then that will be reflected in my demeanor, in my behavior. One cannot claim to be some big person, but you see that he doesn't have the proper behavior. So we have to be very cautious. Prabhupada said, what did he say? Be careful. All the GBCs, be careful. And why are the GBCs? Everyone else was also sitting there, but the GBCs are the leaders. They're the ones who are expected to uphold the standards, to maintain the standards, and at times enforce the standards. And individually, on our own, we have to be able to gauge what am I doing? How am I advancing? Am I advancing? It's a good question. And here, Prabhupada gives this nice purport, very interesting. I'll have to thank, we have the devotees who assign verses, and you have to wonder, why do they assign certain verses to certain people, just to give us a little opportunity to speak on certain topics. But the main essence of this topic is that one has to become servant to Krishna. Because if he becomes servant of Krishna, then everything else is solved. Harava bhaktasya kato mahagunai. Manoratenasati daivaktopadi. That if you're a devotee, all the good qualities will develop. But if not, then there'll never be any good qualities. Because you'll remain hovering on the mental platform. Manoratenasati, the chariot of the mind. The manorat. What to do, what not to do. By the time you decide, the time to execute is finished. Opportunity is lost. Everything is happening in Krishna consciousness on Krishna's time. His time is not our time. Just like they have the joke about ISI, Indian Standard Time, IST. You know, that there's some disconnect with reality. And if you say 12 o'clock, really it means 1 o'clock. But here, the opportunity comes but once in a lifetime. But once in a lifetime. And the ability to catch that moment, to grasp it, to cultivate it. I mean, this is why we describe the bhakti-lata kripa. One has to take expert care. In this season, so many devotees were complaining, oh, my Tulsi, she died. It was a very difficult winter. So we could apply that excuse to anything. But it means ultimately that I did not take care. We can have any excuse. It doesn't really matter. One godbrother, we ran the Bhakti program together for some time, and he was just right for this engagement, because new devotees come in and they have so much baggage, so much material baggage, and they're used to simply making excuses. And he would say, excuses are like elbows. Everybody has two. That's the polite way to put it. There's other ways. In the military, we had a different way. But for the bhaktas, that was sufficient. Excuses are like elbows. Everybody has two. So we don't need to make excuses. We need to make solutions. I have a problem. I need to accept that problem first, and then I need to address it. You know, what is the problem? I'm tired. I'm not getting up for Mangalarti, so what is the solution? Go to bed earlier. You know, it seems simplistic, and in most cases it is. We've heard that Srila Prabhupada commented that difficult for the crooked, simple for the simple-hearted. And this is true. You will always see that. In that way, we appreciate Prabhupada's vision. He had already heard every possible excuse. And if you read the letters on his desk sometimes he's repeatedly responding to the same question. And he knows that the answers, everything is in his books, which is why he said, read my books, read my books. One time, one devotee was writing and asking Srila Prabhupada so many questions, one after another, this. Finally, Prabhupada responded that use your common sense. Use your common sense. And if you don't have any, ask someone who does. Okay? So it's not always having the solution, but knowing where to find the solution. That is why the association of devotees is so important. There is nothing that cannot be accomplished when the association of devotees are strong together and acting in concert with Srila Prabhupada and one another for the propagation and perpetuity of this movement. Nothing. He even said that one time that if you were sincere, you could conquer this world in 18 days. You know, we know he was speaking euphemistically in one sense, but in one sense he wasn't. You know, but that is the opportunity we have before us, collectively and individually, to conquer over our own demons. Everyone, when we read Bhagavad-Gita, sometimes when I come to that chapter, modes of material nature or divine and demoniac, I'm thinking, oh, this is too difficult to read because it's like a self-portrait. You know, you read these things and say, oh, yes, I know about that. Ishwaraham aham bogi siddhaham balavan sukhi. Everyone wants to be controller, either of his household or his society or his community or his nation. Prabhupada said that is part of this master disease. Everyone wants to be the controller. But first he has to be faithful servant of his spiritual master. Parampara servant. I like that term, first time I heard it. Parampara servant. So much import in that phrase. Sometimes we wonder, whose servant am I? You know, maybe I've had some difficulty, maybe my spiritual master has gone. So whose servant am I? But that eternal connection, I am the parampara servant. I am serving the parampara. This understanding is a superior concept. One will never be absent in his conviction if he holds that close. You know, otherwise, then, what did Krishna or Arjuna say? That like a riven cloud. This term, not very common. Riven. Riven means to have holes in it. Like if you have a piece of cloth and you cut it in many places. Just cut, cut, cut. That's called riven. R-I-V-E-N. So a cloud that's become riven, it dissipates. It's no longer the shape in the sky that we associate with a cloud. So that can happen. One loses his form, his shape, his identity, and then he becomes like a riven cloud. So, other interesting points that Srila Prabhupada made with regards to who one should serve. You know, that one should not serve someone who is fallen, whether it be the wife, the husband, or the spiritual master. So this is not just some sentiment. And one can observe these things and he can take counsel to try to understand. What did Prabhupada say in the Bhagavad-Gita 10th chapter, verses 4 and 5? In the purport, he said, intelligence means to understand things in their proper perspective. So it's very, how can you say, poignant, to the point. Intelligence means to understand things in their proper perspective. It means don't jump to conclusions without knowing all the facts. Perspective means knowing all the facts, knowing the context, not just taking something that Srila Prabhupada said, separate from the narration, the narrative, the context. That happens a lot. But one has to understand things in the proper perspective. So we have some time for questions. I'll read the verse again. Read all the verses again. A chaste woman must dress nicely and decorate herself with golden ornaments for the pleasure of her husband. Always wearing clean and attractive garments, she should sweep and clean the household with water and other liquids, so that the entire house is always pure and clean. She should collect the household paraphernalia and keep the house always aromatic with incense and flowers, and must be ready to execute the desires of her husband, being modest and truthful, controlling her senses, and speaking in sweet words. A chaste woman should engage in the service of her husband with love, according to time and circumstances. A chaste woman should not be greedy, but satisfied in all circumstances. She must be very expert in handling household affairs, and should be fully conversant with religious principles. She should speak pleasingly and truthfully, and should be very careful, and always clean and pure. Thus, a chaste woman should engage with affection in the service of a husband who is not fallen. Just consider, if you substitute the term a chaste woman for a chaste disciple, then this is completely appropriate consideration for any aspiring devotee. Because what is the difference? What is the difference? If one is a chaste disciple, if one is a chaste wife, the relationship is essentially the same. So our relationship with the spiritual master should always be considered from that viewpoint, that I am a faithful servant. And whatever Srila Prabhupada desires, then that is my order. So this, hopefully this will keep one fixed. You know, but that mentality has to be carefully cultivated. It does not just happen spontaneously. Just like in that verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 7:29, where Prabhupada says, Nija Britya Parshram. Nija Britya Parshram. That one becomes apprentice. He learns how to serve. So, an apprentice means sometimes for years. It's not that someone is thinking, oh, I've come and now I must become the temple president, or a sannyasi, or guru, GBC. There is no such ambition in the execution of devotional service. One only wants to serve. If he can serve in a greater capacity, and he can remain a faithful servant, then there is no problem. But if one is now thinking that I've become temple president or I've become GBC, then what is the difference between that and Ishvaraham Aham Bhogi Siddhaham Balavan Sukhi? There's no difference. I am the controller, Ishvaraham Aham Bhogi, I am the enjoyer. Siddhaham, I am perfect. Balavan Sukhi, I am powerful. So this is definitely demonic, and we should not have any trace of that within Krishna consciousness. Should always be the servant. I'm the servant to my spiritual master, I'm the servant to my god brothers. In this way, always servant, never master. Actually, the name of that lecture that Prabhupada gave, devotees always, they nicely pick out some point and they title that. So the name of that lecture is Master Disease, the Master Disease. So any questions, comments, corrections? Yes, Prabhu. Is there a microphone available? I don't see one here. Oh, there it is. See? Imperfect senses. Still not. Tudgaya.
Thank you for the wonderful lecture. I just have one question. Like earlier you said that if the husband is fallen or degraded, the wife should live separately, like she won't live away from the husband. But in today's scenario where you see that the mentality of people is so degraded, especially men, I'm not like including the bodies, but generally, so the women should become very vulnerable to society. And in that case, is it better for her to live with a husband that's fallen, or to be like subject to everybody? And because like control and protection for women is very important. That's what Srila Rupa said, that women should always be protected. So what would be your understanding on that? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Well, you're correct. The woman should always be protected by her father, her husband, or by her grown-up children. So depending on the situation, one of those circumstances would be applicable. But if in the absence of the father, unless the father has passed away, or in the absence of the children, that the children are not yet grown, then it is better to live separately. But Prabhupada said not to get remarried. Separately doesn't mean necessarily living with the husband. You know, that depends on the circumstances. You see, at least in the Western countries, if a situation like that arises, the man is responsible for all the care and protection still of the woman, although he's not living together. That's called alimony. He has to pay everything. So in that sense, she has that surety. It's not a substitute, but at least she's not without means. She can still be with her parents. She can still be with her adult children, if that's the case. In many circumstances, we've seen in the Vedic scripture where a woman is faithfully following the husband even though he's fallen. I mean, the one that comes to mind is Pingala, you know. There was a prostitute, she was demanding, you know, payment in such an astronomical amount. And there's one poor woman, her husband, he wanted to enjoy her pleasures, but he could not afford. So she in turn made arrangements. This is an extreme example. This does not mean that this is the standard. But such examples are there, which means we should do whatever is necessary up to the point where it no longer, because we know, Prabhupada said, don't surrender your intelligence. If a person is a demon, you don't live with a demon. You know, but we have to take a lot of things into consideration in that respect. And it's always better if the household remains intact, even if there is some tension. Anyone who says after being married for 35, 40 years that there was never tension, or there was never, then he's a liar. So there'll always be some, but Prabhupada said it is not something you break so easily. So this is the key. One has to have a cool head. Should not, what did Prabhupada also say? Another interesting. Of course, these things, I have to defer to my older godbrothers who remember these things. One time he commented, and at the time it was startling to us. He said, better for a brahmana to fall down to sex life than to fall down to anger. Better for a brahmana, because by falling down to anger, one loses all of his intelligence. Kama esha, krodha esha, raja guna samudvaya. Everything is lost by anger. Everything. So this is the most serious predecessor to fall down. You see someone who cannot control his anger. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. You can just speak loudly. Jor se bolo.
We are speaking about the Prabhupada, whatever he has given, whatever he is telling us. So hearing is very important. We should hear properly, and whatever he says, we should try to follow whatever is given. He said, yes, you have to read the books, you have to ask questions. So if we read these books, we get our answers in that one. And the important thing is that hearing whatever he has said, and if we follow correctly to that things, and if we do not add our, do not add anything whatever we do. So we have to see that we should add.
Do not add and do not subtract. My personal, sometimes reading, we're so fortunate, first of all, by the mercy of the devotees, we have Vedabase, we have Vanipedia, we have all these compilations. There is no excuse not to research, to study. But the one special aspect of Srila Prabhupada's presence is his voice. So I try to listen to Prabhupada's lectures every day, many times, whenever the opportunity arises. Because many times we're just cleaning, then the lecture is playing. It's not that full attention always, but sometimes the words will just jump out at you. And I've heard Prabhupada's lectures. If I look at my phone, it says I've listened to this lecture 5,000 times. And I'm thinking, how is that possible? But you listen to it many times. And all different lectures. So this is, for me, the closest, because he reads in Dil who tells that Vaishnavas die when now are living still in sound. The Vaishnava dies to live in. Living spreads the holy name around. So the sound vibration is very important. Trying to hear from Srila Prabhupada, this is not just because, yes, I'm sentimentally attached. I'm not claiming that this is some special dispensation. But by listening to Srila Prabhupada, I fill up my gas tank every day. And I'm ready to do whatever is required. Why should we wake up in doubt? Well, I don't know if I'll be able to execute my duties today. That's not the way to begin the day. You know, sometimes people say you measure your success by the small, they call it the 3 foot. I was never so tired that I cannot go the next 3 feet. And so 3 feet by 3 feet, if we approach spiritual life in a measured way, we're measured in our japa, we're chanting our rounds, we're getting up early, we're following. Everything has numbers. My godbrother used to joke about this, International Society for Rules and Regulations. The 4 regulative principles, these things, everything had a number. But that's okay. We don't mind being under these voluntary restrictions. These are not impositions. One has to differentiate between the two. We can leave any time. The door is right there. No one has to stay. And Prabhupada even described how that happens, this throwing and covering potency. He said sometimes someone comes for a few days and then he leaves. And Prabhupada said he's been thrown by Maya. He's been thrown out. So yes, we have to hear very carefully, and we have to follow very carefully. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu. The microphone. Oh, it's a microphone, Leela. Hold on, help is coming. Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Say it again.
Okay, thank you. I was reading the verse, Prabhupada writes, the conclusion is that the husband should be a pure Vaishnava and that the women should be a chaste bride. With all the symptoms described in this regard, then both of them will be happy and make spiritual progress in Krishna consciousness. So I was thinking that this has to be an ideal situation, but what if the husband and wife both are practicing their own? How do they benefit with each other and how do they advance?
Well, I think you answered the question. If they're both practicing, then what is the issue?
There are ups and downs in the practice.
No, up and down, we have some very simple analogies. One is that you don't criticize the person who is taking a shower for being dirty. It's understood that he's in the shower. He's getting clean. He may not be fully clean, but he's in the process. So these are the simple things that we heard when we were new bhaktas. But they're very, how can you say, concise. They're almost like sutras. We weren't ready to hear more. But it's a fact. Sometimes the karmis say the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Technically, it's always full because it's half filled with something and the other half is air. So it's always full. But your perspective. So if you're both executing spiritual life and there are some difficulties, you're becoming stronger by facing these concerns head on and dealing with them. The main thing is that, in my experience, the man has to set the example. He has to be prepared to be someone that his wife can respect. How can, in a family, in a situation, how can it go on if the wife or the husband there's no mutual respect? Then that relationship is doomed. So that's why as Vaishnavas are always very careful. On top of being husband and wife, sometimes we're a god brother, god sister like this. So we have to appreciate that subtlety and be very considerate. Not that I demand respect, but one has to command respect. It has to be there naturally. It's not something which you assign to yourself, like some boss. You have to respect me. It doesn't work like that. One has to act in such a way. Prabhupada said that Krishna will call him. So this is the same in all our circumstances. First deserve and then desire. First deserve and then desire. He said that on a few occasions. But essentially the meaning was the same. That you act in such a way that Krishna will call you. If you're thinking like that, then your wife or your husband, they will see that, yes, my husband, my wife, they're trying very hard. And I will help. I want to help. This is something which comes. This is the nature of that loving relationship in Krishna consciousness, not artificial. Any other questions, comments? Srila Prabhupada ki.